Bring in show music, please.
Hi, I'm CNBC producer Katie Kramer. Today on Squawk Pod. Prolific technology investor Philippe Laffont, an early backer of Facebook and Netflix, is our special guest.
In general, now you have to be a life cycle investor. More shots on goal at the end is what you hope for.
He says 2025 is the year of the privates, inside the promise he sees in private companies building artificial intelligence.
When the market goes up, then I'm definitely a public investor. But then when the market doesn't do well, I switch to, venture and growth.
And the electoral earthquake in America's largest city, digging into the results of the Democratic mayoral primary with CNBC contributor Michelle Caruso-Cabrera.
Basically, last night, a socialist won the Democratic primary in New York City.
What the stunning results mean for a new era of politics.
Did you ever run for student council or anything? Did you?
Part of my campaign was giving out free things.
Plus, all the rest of today's news that got us squawking. It's Wednesday, June 25th. Squawk Pod begins right now.
Stand Becky by in 3, 2, 1. Cue it, please.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Squawk Box right here on CNBC. We're live from the NASDAQ market site in Times Square. I'm Becky Quick along with Joe Kernen and Andrew Ross Sorkin. Very big day for the markets. Dow was up by over 500 points. S&P is now less than 1% from an all-time high, and the NASDAQ 100 closed at a new all-time high yesterday. So we are looking at some very positive moves for the market, moving back towards these new highs or at new highs if you're the NASDAQ 100. Check out Treasury yields. Of course, all of this happening with the backdrop of Jay Powell talking yesterday, and he'll be speaking to Congress once again today. You are seeing the 10-year at 4.29, the 2 years at 3.79, and then you've got oil prices. WTI was down another 6% yesterday. It saw its lowest settling point in about 3 weeks. The day before, crude was off by about 7%. So you're talking about some massive pullbacks on the idea that there is this ceasefire in the Middle East. Right now, WTI is at $65.09 a barrel. Brent is at $67.90 a barrel. And then if you check out Bitcoin this morning, you'll see right now it is 106.
Yep.
Actually,
almost 107.
Yeah, close to it.
Been moving.
Good morning. Good morning to you all, and welcome to this leaders session of the North Atlantic Council.
Go ahead, yes.
Mr. President, how is the Iran-Israel ceasefire going?
Meantime, President Trump taking aim at the media following the U.S. strikes on Iran's nuclear program. In a post on Truth Social last night, Trump blaming CNN and the New York Times for what he called, quote, an attempt to demean one of the most successful military strikes in history. Both outlets, along with many others, citing an early U.S. government report that the American strikes only set Iran's nuclear program back by a few months. But in his social media post, the president claimed, quote, the nuclear sites in Iran are completely destroyed. Speaking in the Netherlands earlier this morning, this is how the president responded to a question about the damage report intelligence.
The intelligence was very inconclusive. The intelligence says we don't know. It could have been very severe. That's what the intelligence says. So I guess that's correct. But I think we can take the we don't know. It was very severe. It was obliteration.
Director General of the UN's nuclear watchdog has said no one, including the International Atomic Energy Agency, was in a position to fully assess underground damage at Iran's key Fordo site. And the thing that I couldn't understand when you read at least the reports about it is whether they just were able to close off effectively the entrances to these things by knocking all of that down versus actually knocking, which seems to be the case, at minimum the case, versus whether they were able to knock down the entire facility.
Before the go-ahead and before it happened.
You and I were talking about the bunker buster, whether it even worked.
It would work. And President Trump had to be convinced it was going to work. Whether it worked or not, I don't know, but it's a big ask. It's 300 feet down or whatever it is. So I think they didn't do two. I don't know how many they did in each entrance. So there are 3 or 4 in each entrance. Like I said off camera, I haven't finished my direct assessment of I know nothing. As usual, I know nothing.
The IAEA is really trying to get back in and be able to assess some of these situations. You are going to have somebody who comes in and takes a look at it.
Is it possible that it was down so far that those actual build structures survive. I'm certain that is a possibility. Is it just a couple of months? I doubt that. I think Israel, before the United States did anything, I think Israel had degraded a lot of the facilities more than just a couple of months. And then you add in how many scientists are dead. Of course, did you see one guy yesterday that Israel said was dead? He was out partying with everyone in the streets, and obviously, I don't know, some IRGC guy who was obviously not dead. So once again, we got the fog of war, and we got the fog of the mayoral race. So we need an expert. Did you ever run for student council or anything? Did you?
Did you? I did. I tried. And you know what? You would have appreciated this. Part of my campaign was giving out free things. No joke. Free pizza. Free pizza was part of my campaign.
I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say it. I was. If I had run, that would have been my thing. I would have been cutting back on everyone's benefits if I had run.
Well, we now see what's on the winning end of this.
Which I didn't, but that makes sense for you. You're giving away free things, buying votes. I'm telling people you're going to eat cake. Former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, someone's here. That's why I said this. Someone who has run for office, who knows how sharp the elbow is. Michelle Caruso-Cabrera is here to talk about Mamdani being the guy after Cuomo basically conceded to this gentleman and state assemblyman.
Tonight was not our night. Tonight was Assemblyman Mamdani's night.
Mamdani! Mamdani! My friends, we have done it. I will be your Democratic nominee for the mayor of New York City.
No candidate is set to secure a majority in the first round of the city's ranked choice election. But last night, he did lead the vote count, and he had, as we're finding out, 44% in 1 million votes, the biggest we've seen.
It was a very heavy turnout, very heavy turnout.
We have betting sites now, so nothing's a surprise anymore.
Right.
Because he moved ahead in those and in some of the polls. So I still thought it might not happen.
So last night...
I don't live here, so it's not...
So the results aren't official yet, but basically last night a socialist won the Democratic primary in New York City. And generally in states or cities where you have one party that dominates the politics of a city or state, whoever wins the primary generally goes on to win the general election. So right now, the betting markets have that a socialist will be the next mayor of New York City when the November election. That's Zohran Mamdani. He is an avowed socialist. When he first won his assembly seat back in the summer of 2020, the New York Times tweeted, they were tweets back then, said, there's a new progressive representing Astoria, Queens, which is the part of New York City that he is from or is living in. And he tweeted back at them and said, stop calling me a progressive, I'm a socialist. And back then he was running on defund the police, etc. He didn't say
Global
defund
Intifada.
Well, that's this time around.
Does he know
right?
what that is exactly?
Oh, I think he knows exactly what it is, sure.
So we want October 7th type things to happen here and to
Michelle, I heard somebody this morning, I think it was the managing editor of Bloomberg, saying that he has reached out to Jewish leaders in New York City and says that he wants to work with them. He's just pro-Palestine. What do you make of that? What do you think that means?
So, yes, he's absolutely reached out more than we have seen other members of the Democratic Socialists.
Very recently?
Very recently. But make no mistake, when you look at the Democratic Socialists, and you can go to their website and look it up, and their stronghold is New York City, they support the BDS movement, the boycott and defund. They prohibit people from traveling to Israel. If they're going to be a member of the party, they won't get the endorsement. So, this was a big issue in New York City. It was where did you stand on the state of Israel and its existence.
So when you look at a map, though, and you start to then project out into where we'll be a couple months from now, the business community, as we learned yesterday when Kathy Wild's here, I think her phrase was terrified. The feeling is terrifying. How do you think that I imagine the business community, whatever you believe that means, will try to rally either around Cuomo or do they try to rally around Adams? I don't know. And then the second question is that can something like that actually work insofar as clearly there is a group of people, a lot of people in this city, but the question is how many of them really who both like him and maybe not like them.
Right.
If that makes sense.
So let's clarify for the viewers, because you mentioned Andrew Cuomo. He lost the Democratic primary. Right. So why are we talking about him in the general? Because New York State has this particular election law where you can have another line on the ballot. So he has another line on the ballot. Andrew Cuomo will be on the ballot in November under a different party called the Fight and Deliver Party. This is a very common practice to have several lines, so you can walk in and vote for your choice of a candidate, sometimes on 3 or 4 different parties.
What a stupid system.
I don't judge it. I just live in this world. And so the current mayor of New York City, who clearly didn't think he could win the Democratic primary, also has a line. So we're going to have 4 people on the ballot in November. The question is, you can have a line on the ballot, but are you going to run? So Andrew Cuomo said last night he was going to look at the numbers and decide what he's going to do. He's already raised a ton of money, and the question is, can you raise that many millions more after having lost the Democratic primary? We'll wait and see what the business community does, what former Mayor Bloomberg does. We have a Republican, a perennial candidate, Curtis Sliwa, who's going to be on the Republican line. This is a city that is quite, anti-Republican. So I don't think he's going to have much of a shot, but we'll see. What I will say is that the betting markets do think that the person who picks up the most gain from this is the current mayor of New York City, Eric Adams. But let's see a few polls.
But what do the betting markets say
right
about?
Now, that's 75% that Zoran is the mayor of New York City.
Exactly.
It's early. Remember, it was less than a week ago that they thought Cuomo was in the lead, right? Until the last poll came out, and that's when the betting markets switched.
Is there a wild card, dark horse, somebody who could emerge and get themselves still on a ballot that we don't know about?
No, that ballot is set. That ballot is set.
Okay.
We know what
Train
the ballot
left the station there.
The train has left the station.
Are you?
Well,
do you have a hat to throw there? I mean, you've got a platform that's similar to his, that you ran on, that you said free things, right?
When he was in the city council.
You're well known.
You think I got a shot?
I'm ready to. I don't live here, but I'm ready to consider. You know what?
You be my comptroller. Becky's going to
controller. No, but you know what? I don't want to go here, but Gotham. Have you seen what Batman is up against in Gotham and what the guy running for mayor is up against? That's what it reminds me of. They're taking Wall Streeters and make him walk out onto the ice in the East River and then they fall through.
Yeah.
I mean, there is a class warfare that's going.
So what's happened here, I think,
eat the rich type.
There's a division within the Democratic Party in New York City and New York State, and it's emblematic of the division that we see nationally. How far left does the Democratic Party want to go?
And Chicago,
it wasn't
they
a
tried
winner
to save it.
in the national.
Of all people, the Chicago Tribune tried to save New York from itself. And
the New York Times told voters
the New
not
York
to vote
Times.
for the social.
Think about
The New York Times said yesterday
Think
they said
about
his
that.
joyful campaign brought new voters into the fold.
Yes, but then they said, please don't rank him on the ballot. They said they weren't going to endorse anybody, and then they said,
Kathy Hochul did not endorse anybody, and I wonder if she's regretting that now.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So you are all in on Cuomo? Is that
I was all in on Cuomo. Yes,
you were
I
all
was.
in, right.
Yes,
And you still
yes. are. I'm a registered Democrat. I'm a centrist Democrat in New York City that has been trying to push back the left. Not very successfully, I've noticed.
So I just wonder how. So why did Catherine Wild say that Adams is she thinks he's going to end up being mayor?
Well, it's possible. It's possible that if there's enough voters out there who say, okay, they don't want somebody that, because now in the general you get a lot more centrist Democrats, right? Who comes out in the primary? Hardcore voters, mostly the hardcore left. When you see the turnout.
The problem is if you have both Adams and Cuomo running, do they split that vote?
Then you split the ticket. Yes.
Right. What is a different group of people? I mean, to the question you asked me before the show began, you said, "Did you vote yesterday?" And I said, "I didn't vote because I'm actually not a Democrat." I know you laughed at that.
I did.
But I'm not a registered Democrat.
It was more of a chortle.
So I was not voting.
More than a chortle.
I
got you. You were a registered independent. Okay, but here's what you have to understand in New York City. That doesn't mean you're an independent. It means you're a member of the Independent Party, which is an actual party.
I understand that, but the point, though, is that there's a lot of people in this city who didn't vote yesterday.
Because they couldn't.
Because they couldn't.
Okay.
And therefore, where
What's
this all
the
lands
normal-
later
what's
is
the
a
normal
different
turnout
story.
in the mayoral election? It's piddly. It's piddling, isn't it? What is it?
You're talking
10%?
about the general?
Yeah.
I
like
think it's
10
going to be very high. It is
but
piddly. I
previous
was
it's
focused
been
on
what?
last night's
But
numbers. We
previous
got a
it's
million
been-
voters last night, which is very, very
it
high.
could
So I
be
think
high.
it's going to be high.
But normally
Yes.
it's like less than a
Yeah, no,
million
it's
people
very
elect a
small.
mayor,
It's very
don't they?
small. Yeah. It's out of 8.8 million
you
people.
get what
You
you
got to
just-
remember, there's a large percentage that can't vote because they're not citizens. Like if you go to certain parts of
2021, about a
Queens-
million people
Yeah.
What do you mean they can't vote?
A million people
Oh,
voted
that's
last
right.
night.
There's a different president. So they can't vote now.
They said
kidding.
there's a million
They can only vote
voted
once?
in 2021. And that represented
They're down to
23%
one
of
vote,
registered
yeah.
voters.
They're down to only
So
one vote.
23%
Yeah.
is what.
23?
There's only about 4 million registered voters. I guess,
I
just
often haven't paid
4.4
attention
million.
to the numbers in the general because the general just
Doesn't matter. Right.
Yeah, often. Maybe it will this year.
Whoa.
Oh, I'm sorry. 4.7 million people were registered to vote in New York City in 2021. So
Florida, I mean, the weather, the ocean, it's nice down there.
Just say nationally, what we've seen in certain parts of New York City is that parts of the city that used to vote Democratic, they get so disgusted with the Democratic Party for moving so far left, they end up voting Republican. We saw that in certain parts of Queens in the last mayoral election, in the general.
I don't, I'm out of here at 9, but for people that live here, I don't think it's great, is it? It's
Wasn't my choice, Joe.
your choice. That's as much as you'll say. Okay, thank you. Good to have you here.
Always
A lot
a
of
pleasure.
fanfare when you showed up.
Oh, thank
as
you.
you know.
Yes.
Cheese will be next.
Coming up next on Squawk Pod, our guest is Philippe Laffont, the billionaire who started multi-strategy hedge fund Coatue in 1999. He was an early investor in Facebook and Netflix, and today in his public and private investments, he's betting on AI, even if innovation means a shift in employment.
I'm optimistic that at the end, as the price of things goes down, more people create companies, more people become entrepreneurs, and we sort of square things up.
But there's a lot of change that takes place there and breaking down of old guards along the
For
way.
sure.
Laffont is usually heads down investing, so he rarely does interviews. And this one is exclusive to CNBC, so stick around after this break. This is Squawk Pod.
Up and Andrew, Q.
You're watching Squawk Box on CNBC. I'm Andrew Ross Sorkin on this Wednesday morning, along with Joe Kernen and Becky Quick. We've got a huge lot of things to cover, a lot of ground to cover with our next guest. We're very excited about it. The markets, the Fed, why he's excited about private markets, AI, some very provocative views about Alphabet, which, by the way, didn't make his Fantastic 40 list, and so much more. An exclusive with famed tech investor Philippe Laffont. He's the founder and portfolio manager of Coatue. It's a tech hedge fund. A private markets investor, $55 billion under management. Some people think of you as a venture capitalist to some degree these days. What do you think of yourself as, actually? What are you anymore?
The winner of the AT&T Pro-Am is what.
That's what we just heard.
Is what he thinks of himself.
That's true, but I don't think that's what my investors would care about.
Yeah, they might not like that. You're too good. Your name is on the wall.
It is.
At
It's
the first
supposed
tee?
to be on the wall right there next to Rory McIlroy. So
For me
Wow.
to be on there, I'd have to change my name to Philippe Laffont. I
There
think
you go.
For me, yeah. Congratulations.
But what are you these days? Because you're doing a lot of things.
when the market goes up, then I'm definitely a public investor. But then when the market doesn't do well, I switch to, venture and growth. But I think that in general, now you have to be a life cycle investor. Sometimes you have a new idea, it's a small little company, then you miss it as a small company, you try to invest it in again. You miss it as a big company, you invest within on the public side. I think more shots on goal at the end is what you hope for.
I said at the beginning of this, and I've teased it a couple times, because you put together a fascinating deck from your East Meets West event, which is an unbelievable thing that you put together, about what happens to the Mag 7. This is sort of a public markets issue, but really a private markets issue, because you think that this whole thing may ultimately turn over.
Yeah, absolutely. You look at the Mag 7, it's been so popular for a while. And I felt like this year maybe is the change. And if you remember a few years ago, the Mag 7 was called the FANG Index and then the FANG++. These indices change. And we were thinking like this year, there's some Mag 7s that have worked out well, some that haven't. Is it the change of the guard?
And you think this is it?
I think this is it. I think that with AI, it's sort of this big new wave. You know, we're sort of ushering out of the era of cloud and SaaS into the era of AI, and there's going to be some changes.
So who are the half a dozen winners that replace them then?
So we looked at the, let's say, top 25 companies and what happens to them every 5 years. And some of them just drop out. They run fast, but they don't run as fast as the others. Then you've got some new IPOs that come in. Is OpenAI going to be part of the Mag 7 of the future? Is SpaceX going to be part of the Mag 7? And so we try to recombine the index and imagine what's, we're here today, NASDAQ 100. What's the NASDAQ 100 5 years out?
And who's on it then?
I thought you were going to ask me who's not on it.
Well, we can do who's not on it. By the way, Alphabet's not on it. Tell us why.
You know what I did? I just thought some of the big companies are going to be amazingly positioned. Microsoft is going to stay on it, and maybe today it's a $3 billion company, but let's say it doubles in 5 years, it could be 5 or 6 billion.
Oh, trillion.
Trillion, yes,
Right.
sorry, of course, trillion.
Yes.
Then we added Bitcoin. We thought of Bitcoin as a company. Today, I think Bitcoin is 2 trillion. And we're like, well, could it get to also 4 or 5 trillion? Obviously, Bitcoin's not a company. It'd be like saying if gold's a company, but I thought it was interesting as a
Market
new
cap,
asset.
yeah. Right. Market cap. Yeah.
Market cap,
Amazing.
2 trillion is
When
so
did you
big.
get involved in Bitcoin?
You know, I've not gotten involved with Bitcoin, and I wake up every day at 3 in the morning, and I'm like, why am I such an idiot? What have I been waiting for, not being involved in it? And it just goes up and up. In the past, I think this is interesting, the retail investors, they were much faster at getting involved with Bitcoin than the institutional ones. And I always thought Bitcoin's amazing, but it's double or triple the volatility of the NASDAQ. NASDAQ's already pretty volatile. Why do I need to deal with this added volatility? Recently, Bitcoin, when it went down during the tariff, only went down as much as NASDAQ. So it seems the volatility as an asset class is coming down, which I thought was pretty
but
interesting.
given your sort of thesis, do you say to yourself, even at this point in the ball game, if you think it's going to double or triple and going to be part of the NASDAQ 100, if you were to think of it as a company?
Yes, I have to think about it.
That you should own it now?
Yes, I have to think about it now. Do I own it now? Do I own it tomorrow? In a few days? But every day, I do think, why do I not own it? And I think to be a good investor, it's not just like owning the obvious stock, but sometimes you have to change your mind and you have to just say, well, I made a mistake and I'm changing my mind, and maybe Bitcoin will be that.
How do you come up to that valuation? Is it as a percentage of gold's market cap or something?
So I thought like the market cap of the world, the net worth of the world is, I think, 450 to 500.
Trillion.
Equities are, let's say, 120. Gold above and under the ground is 20.
20 trillion.
And then Bitcoin is 2 trillion. And I was like, okay, well, 2 trillion, let's say it represents 0.5% of the net worth of the world. Could it go to 1 or 2? Some people say, oh, Bitcoin's going to be 100 trillion. I'm like, okay, that's not, maybe a bit of an aggressive estimate, but could it double over a period of time? And then we talked about the de-dollarization of the world, the end of U.S. exceptionalism. So those would be some of the reasons.
Hey, Philippe, you mentioned that because of SaaS and cloud kind of not being as powerful, that's why some of these companies are going to move out. We've had other people who have come in and said the Mag 7's not going to be as strong in terms of an investment vehicle because they now have to spend a lot of money on things like AI development that they never had to spend before. Do you think about that? Or you think Microsoft's still going to be there because as long as you're a leader in AI, it doesn't matter if you have to spend a ton of CapEx to get that?
Yes, that's a great question. And the idea would be like, look, the free cash flow is going to disappear. They're going to have to reinvest so much. And in fact, what's funny is at the beginning of the cloud, about 10, 15 years ago, everybody said the same, Microsoft and Amazon, why are you guys spending so much in this new business? And at one point, I remember the new business was losing 10% of the overall profits. And today, it's 50% of the profits. And so I think you have to invest. But public investors in general, we just want things to be like they were. Please don't invest, just keep growing, give me my little returns. But I think the entrepreneurs, they're like, no, this is a huge business and we got to go for it.
Where do you stand on the hardware side of all of this? Because there's a sort of great debate. Either we are in a massive shortage of chips and we're going to be needing this stuff for as long as the eye can see, or this is like a big overbuild a la fiber, some of the fiber stuff that was going on back in the late 90s.
Yes. So you think about it in terms of the return on investment and say, wait, we're spending $500 billion a year, multiplied by 2, because if the chip is $500 billion, the total system is $1 trillion, the data centers, the cooling, this and that. Where do we get the return on the trillion? I think maybe 2 years ago and 1 year ago, some people were saying, look, the return is not there, this is crazy, we're in a bubble. But when you speak to companies now, the amount of AI that they're implementing, the savings that they're getting, and if you think of the world economy, I think just in the US, labor is maybe 20 trillion, the savings that we could get off that. You look at Microsoft, their number of employees is going down. Amazon, Andy Jassy.
You just had Andy Jassy at your event.
He was unequivocal that basically the number of employees over the long run is going to go down. Those are the benefits of AI. And so I tend to see like the glass is maybe half full and half empty, but I'm very much on the half full.
Are you a believer,
camp.
though, that, I mean, we've always talked about, I mean, by the way, given what's going on in the city, UBI and all of these things. I mean, look, if nobody has a job, we all have a problem. The question is whether you think this is going to generate an enormous amount of productivity and that we're going to find roles for everybody in some other way.
Yes. So there's a big debate with AI, like, are we all going to be, you know, out of a job?
Displaced,
obviously, and displaced. And I think in 1900, the US economy was 52% agriculture, and today it's 1%. So over 100 years, we can replace, but then find new jobs for half of the economy, right? So the question is AI going to happen so fast that we can't just replace? There's this advertising that came out that's really funny. You should look at it on X, and it's a flying monkey, and he breaks his teeth, and he's looking for a dentist in LA. And that new ad cost $500 to make, and an ad usually costs, let's say, $1 million to make. Wildly popular ad. So the question too is when the price of things come down, there are going to be lots of people that can become ad creators, lots of people that are going to become directors and stuff like that. So I'm optimistic that at the end, as the price of things goes down, more people create companies, more people become entrepreneurs, and we sort of square things up.
But there's a lot of change that takes place there and breaking down of old guards along the way.
For sure.
Yeah.
And that's why I always thought, like, thinking about the index of the future. When things don't change very much, okay, then maybe you can't beat BlackRock. But now that things are changing, the index of the future should outperform the existing index by a lot.
Before we take a quick pause, and we're going to continue this conversation, I am curious, though, talking about private markets, public markets, these now semi-liquid vehicles that you've created with Jeff Bezos as backing and another a whole bunch of others.
Michael Dell.
And Michael Dell. How do you think about the private market versus the public market and the distinction between the valuations?
Listen, the public market should have higher valuation because it's more liquid. If you give people more chance to be liquid, you should be able to pay more. But the private market also has a great role, which is when you're building a company, Becky, to your point, sometimes you have to lose money before you make money. You go do that in the private side. I think that the private and the public markets are going to be a little bit more intermeshed now, where the decision is not black and white. I'm private and I'm going public. Now you have employee tenders, you have structured capital, you have private equity, you have infrastructure capital. There's so many ways to stay private for longer. This is another reason, if you would like, that you need to be both public and private.
How much do you care about what the Fed is doing at any given moment these days?
I think I actually care a lot because when you're a tech investor, there's this view like, who cares about the Fed? I just invest in tech.
Right.
But then you have events like 2022 where if you're not careful, you can get caught in such a downdraft, and on a mark-to-market basis, it can hurt a lot. And so we care a lot about what happens. I would say that right now I hear, of course, a lot of pressure, like let's cut rates, let's cut rates. My simple interpretation is, what if the economy is doing so well that we don't need to cut rates? And what if we did cut rates, and that's actually an implication of almost like we're seeing some weakness that's not there. So I'm not too worried. It seems like the economy is doing well. We have a data science team. We process about 100 million or so credit card receipts a day. So we have a T+3 view of what people are doing, which is a little bit faster. Usually MasterCard and Visa speak on a monthly basis. We think the consumer is still resilient. The economy is doing well. I don't see exactly the reason to cut rates given the strength. So maybe that's a different view of things.
I want to ask you a different name, Meta. Where is Meta land? I mean, I know you like Meta. It's one of your biggest holdings.
Yes.
Where do they land in the AI debate, fight, whatever you think is out there?
It's a bit of a tale of two cities. On one hand, you've seen they've been very aggressive at restructuring their AI team. They've made some big hires. They've offered some big packages to try to get some of the talent. But on the other hand, they just have this core business that if you think about an advertising business, how long is it before every single person sees an advertising that the AI chooses? And it's like, oh, Becky, a red dress, you a blue shirt, me a white shirt, Joe a tie. Everything is going to be custom designed for each ad, and the price of an ad is going to come down so much. So I think their revenue per ad is going to go up a lot. And since they've implemented AI, their revenue per click has been growing significantly.
So but you like them for the advertising side. You don't like Google or Alphabet.
Listen, Google has a combination of some businesses that are great, Waymo, YouTube, but then they have the search. And with respect to the search, I do think that OpenAI is a threat to the search.
And you own OpenAI too.
Business. We do own OpenAI.
And so, but is your view that Waymo ultimately gets spun off? For example,
I don't know,
some people talk about that as a possibility.
I don't know if they spin off because you don't want to spin off a good business and be left with maybe one that's under attack.
Right.
I think all these tech companies, you've seen, they try a bunch of different businesses. Some work, some don't. But Amazon invented AWS. Google invents Waymo. Apple invented the whole ecosystem of the iPad, the watch. So I don't think so.
What about Elon? Where's Elon playing all of this in your mind?
I think Elon has gone back to being an entrepreneur. He's hyper-focused. I was speaking to some of the all-in guys who know him well last week and mentioned that he's basically...
They were at your conference too, I heard.
24/7 at... when are you going to come to the conference, Andrew?
The invitation lost in the mail. I gotta look.
So I think Elon is back. And when he's back, he can do great things. And the robot taxi started 2 days ago. And I hear it's a sort of a near magical experience to be in a car with no driver and the car makes no mistakes.
Philippe, are you an investor in any of Elon's businesses?
We're investors in SpaceX. We have very small investments in X.AI and I think Neuralink. And we also have a small investment in Tesla.
Interestingly, by the way, I don't know if you saw, Sam Altman made a comment recently about whether OpenAI could ultimately actually do self-driving.
Yes. I think that the ambition of the OpenAI CEO is very great, and I love that. You want to be around the most ambitious people in the world. He wants to compete with Apple. He did the deal with Johnny Ive. He wants to maybe do a social media. He's talked about that. I think you try a lot of different things and you see what works out. I don't know if he'll do the platform immediately.
What about the relationship between OpenAI and Microsoft? I know you invest in OpenAI, you think Microsoft's going to be a big player down the road, but there has been a lot of media talk about frictions between those two companies and the partnership they've built to this point. Are you an investor in Microsoft?
We also happen to be an investor in Microsoft. Yeah. And listen, some of these companies, you start doing a partnership and then you realize that you both want the same prize. And then that becomes a problem. So maybe it's a version of that that's going on. But I know that both Amy, the CFO of Microsoft, and Sarah, the CFO, they're working hard on it. And I would think that a deal is going to be made.
If the deal isn't made, who suffers more from it?
Maybe short-term OpenAI and a long-term Microsoft. So I think at the end they'll make a deal.
Interesting. We're going to run out of time. I got to ask you a question. I don't know if you can answer it or not. You're on the board of ByteDance. We all want to know what's going to happen to TikTok. What do you think?
I used to be a director. Now I'm a board observer. So it's a little different.
Okay.
I think President Trump has given 3 90-day extensions.
Right.
That probably shows that he wants this to be solved, and I hope that post-tariffs, things will be solved. I think in the US, if there's two strong competitors, Facebook and TikTok is better than one, and two competitors force each other to innovate versus having one on their own. So I'm hopeful there'll be two. I'm obviously extremely biased in what I'm saying.
Okay. Philippe Laffont, thank you.
You're not going to ask about New York? New York?
What do you make of the the mayor situation? You got a big operation here in the city.
Yes.
What did you say?
Had
a big.
I think we had Mayor de Blasio for 8 years.
And
New York is really strong.
Yeah.
I'm hopeful the same will happen.
So you're not.
We said that.
He's not throwing in the towel.
De Blasio.
Right.
Yes. emphasis on survive.
Right.
So hopefully we'll be fine. And listen, you make it like a fait accompli. It's not quite done yet. There's still an election. Maybe Cuomo will re-enter as an independent. There's Adams.
Well, if you do so well, can you self-fund some of the police in case it gets cut back or something? Can we? I mean, that's what I'm worried about. I
think there's that question, but the other question is, do you think that there are people in your business who are going to say, you know what, 2% on top of what we're already paying? Some of this, some people are going to be paying 60%. 60%. And they're going to say, you know what, we didn't love Florida before, but maybe Florida, and we'll figure out a way to be here 179 days a year.
Seminole.
For sure.
Did you say Seminole like at the golf course?
I did.
Yes.
Hey,
I'm still working, I'm still working. Some people are going to for sure go. I think that if you want to attract young talent, you got to be in New York. Right. There's just no way around it. And those people who left in Florida, outside of Citadel, I feel a lot of them miss New York. So we'll see.
Okay. I want to thank you for joining us this morning. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Next on Squawk Pod, the NBA approving a sale of the Minnesota Timberwolves.
Is that an apples to apples with what the Lakers are worth?
And former baseball great Alex Rodriguez is in the owners group. We've got the details right after this. You're listening to Squawk Pod from CNBC. Here's Becky Quick.
The NBA approving a $1.5 billion sale of the Minnesota Timberwolves to an investment group that's led by e-commerce entrepreneur Mark Lowry and former baseball star Alex Rodriguez. That deal also includes the sale of the NWA's Minnesota Lynx. The ownership transfer receiving a unanimous vote from the NBA's 30-team owners. It's the culmination of years of work following an initial deal back in 2021. Lowry and Rodriguez will serve as co-chairman of the Timberwolves. The team is planning an introductory news conference next month in Las Vegas during the NBA Summer League.
So is that an apples to apples with what the Lakers are worth?
I don't know. I don't know the
was it a full sale? I mean,
yeah.
10 billion versus 1.5 billion.
Totally different kind of.
I understand, but it's still.
It's a premium on.
Yeah, but still 10 billion versus 1.5 billion. It sounds like maybe go long the Timberwolves and short the Lakers then, if you could.
Well, part of it though, is think about it's like the Yankees or the Knicks or something. Just the amount of paraphernalia that people buy, Lakers stuff. People have Lakers hats. It's just a different number.
But still, it's amazing, isn't it?
It is.
Both of them are do the same. They play basketball, both teams. I mean, one's 10 billion, one's 1.5.
Market size.
Sure.
TV rights, all of that kind of stuff.
It's really good when you win.
The latest valuation had them valued at $3.1 billion.
Yeah, I'm wondering whether that's.
Do you think the 1.5
I don't know what that is. I don't know what it is. I don't know. I was wondering.
Like the most recent ones that had the Lakers valued at $10 billion had the Timberwolves worth $3.1 billion. So I don't know where that comes down.
And that's the pod for today. Thanks for listening. Squawk Box is hosted by Joe Kernen, Becky Quick, and Andrew Ross Sorkin. Tune in weekday mornings on CNBC at 6 Eastern. Follow Squawk Pod wherever you get your podcasts for the best of our show in a podcast that you can take with you on the go and listen anytime you want. Check out our bonus Monday, Wednesday, Friday podcast, 5 Things to Know Before the Opening Bell. Followers get those headlines pre-market 3 mornings a week. Okay, thanks again for being here and for your support. And we will meet you right back here tomorrow.
We are clear. Thanks, guys.